everyone, it's Tam here. I had this idea that I could do a little voiceover over this video while you see the painting being created. And I thought I'd tell you all about the feelings and experiences I had while I was creating this painting, what its meaning is to me, and what supplies I'm using. So I hope you enjoy this little voiceover while you see the painting being created. So this is a painting that I did a couple of days after the full moon in just the end of April, I think, or May, yeah, beginning of May. And I felt the full moon quite strongly, and so it sort of called me to create a painting with a kind of a theme of the moon. And I really like trying out paintings that have a night sky. These type of paintings can be a little bit more challenging for me sometimes, as I don't work with darker colors as often. Now, I wanted to include two characters, one that could look like a mother or an older sister, and then a younger child that could be a younger sister or a child or daughter of some sorts. And I wanted them to eventually come across as connected, or one way or another in connection to or related to the moon and the night sky. Now, the materials I'm working with here, by the way, are a mix of water-soluble crayons by Caran d'Ache, some acrylics paints, and then for the mouth and the eyes I'm using Ecoline inks and Tombow markers that are also ink-based. And currently you see me building up the shading on the face and in the neck area. So I do this in several layered steps. Oh, you could see me there briefly use a hairdryer to dry it out. And I also like using Posca pens for the darker details, or the pupils and the sort of darker accents. And yes, so that's what you see me use here. So Posca pens are filled with acrylics inks, effectively, or acrylics paint, very diluted acrylics paint. I also often use color pencils here to add shading and detail, and here I am also using again some crayons to add some more variety to the colors in the eyes. So when I do my faces, I spend quite some time on layering and adding fine details to eyes and all the facial features. And also I add highlights and different layers of shading and different colors of shading, and I play with that for quite some time, depending on how a face painting goes. I can sometimes go back and forth for many times, where I might layer over something if I think it's too dark, and then I may bring in more darkness if I think it's too light. And you can see here that I'm using a variety of darker colors. These are kind of reds and purples that I like using for shading. And my shading is often fairly dramatic. Sometimes I use subtler shading, but I enjoy the kind of high contrast shading. And my faces are what you might call stylized whimsical. So these are non-realistic faces. And what I mean by that is that the proportions do not mimic realistic human faces, if you will. So they are quite different to real faces. I've kind of really modified the proportions of the face. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm using black ink by Winsor Newton or De La Rowney, I can't remember, that I'm putting in the hair because I had decided that I wanted really dark hair, reminiscent of a night sky. And so what I'm doing, but I wanted it to have some texture, or not just be initially, I'll show you later that it became more solid, but initially I just wanted it to be a bit more textured, or have some variety in how I applied the paint. So what I did was I sprayed the hair with water like I'm doing now, and then I'm dripping ink into it, and that gives you this cool kind of kind of fanned out effect eventually. And I'm throwing some salt onto the ink and the water. And you may be familiar with this method. If you do that, it adds really interesting effects. Once what the salt does, it absorbs water. And then once you take the salt off, once the whole painting is dry, it leaves behind some really interesting texture on your page. Now, eventually, I actually decide that I don't like this, or I wanted the hair to be darker. And I wanted to share with you as well that at many points during the creation of this painting, I wanted to give up and really did not enjoy the painting at all. And you can see here that I was frustrated with the shade. Well, maybe you can't see this, but I was actually frustrated with the shading, and I played with it and added different kinds of pinks and other colors, and I worked with the mouth, and I adjusted and adapted and changed. And often, sometimes a painting or a face comes together, like really clearly and easily. Here you can see that I worked on it a little bit without filming because I was that frustrated with it. So I actually nearly gave up on this painting, and I thought it was really interesting that I pushed through with it and didn't give up on it. And because I didn't give up on it, or I don't know if it's because sometimes I do give up on paintings if I just can't get anywhere with it. But I didn't give up on this painting, and in the end I really like how it came out, and it became one of my most liked images on Instagram, which I think is really interesting and sort of metaphorical for life. Metaphorical, is that a word? It's a real metaphor for this kind of idea that sometimes you go through times in your life and you struggle and you think, maybe I should just give up. This is not going anywhere. And then you decide, no, let's keep going. Let's push through. And then sometimes, not always, of course, but sometimes you don't give up, you push through, and you come out on the other end with an amazing or a really lovely outcome of some sort. So in this case, of course, I'm talking about a painting, but in life it can also become, you transform your life, your experience by continuing a particular activity or experience, even though you want to give up on it. So here I've then decided to, because I was still not super happy with how the hair came out, even though I enjoy the salt effect. I didn't like the grey, that it was sort of faded black, and I thought I really wanted to have a lot more darker black in the hair. And while I was doing that, I also started on the background, and I wanted to create, like I said before, sort of a night sky. Now, night skies are interesting because we assume that night skies are just solely black. But actually, if you're outside next, look at the sky and you'll see that there are tints of blue and indigo and dark grey and all sorts of other colors really in the night sky, depending on what time of night you're there as well. Sometimes it's obviously very dark. And then here, so once I did my the first layer of my background with these three different colors, so I added in some kind of brown or yellow hue, yellow dark, India hue they call it sometimes, and this kind of turquoisey colors. I then went back into the hair and really made it a dark black, and I was really happy with how that came out. It felt a lot stronger. And suddenly I was like, ooh, I really like where this is going. Compared to the hair that I had previously with the texture, I missed the texture, and I thought it was a shame that the texture went. But I was happy with how this looked. It came across as very strong. And then I added in a moon, and I kind of started off with just a bit of a white, and then mixed that in with a bit of grey. And then I started adding in the sort of darker and lighter areas that the moon has. So again, if you look at pictures of the moon, you'll see that there are darker areas that are the deeper, craters of the moon. And I kind of brought in a couple of little colors and used my fingers to add some darker spots and then lighter spots and try to make it quite moony. Although it's quite an impressionist moon, as most of my work is usually more impressionist than super realistic. So here you go, a bit of reflection of that color that you can also find in the background, which I think is actually called Indian hue in the Golden series. It's acrylics, if you're interested in that. And then I finished off the painting by adding these little sparkles to the hair, which gave that cosmic kind of effect, as if it was a night sky with stars, but it was in the hair. And it connected the hair of the girls, therefore, to the night sky, because it's like right? Their hair is as dark as the night sky, or related at least. And yeah, so I really enjoyed adding the sort of sparkles to the hair anyway. I'm a sparkle type girl. I love sparkles, and sometimes it's hard to stop. And here my sort of like recognizable stars that I love adding, and I added some more doodles and elements that I enjoy adding to the all my paintings. I often add little doodles and imagery that is symbolic for me, very meaningful to me, these particular kinds of symbols. And here, for a while I thought I'd leave the other girl without sparkles, and then I thought, actually no, it doesn't work, we should need some sparkles too. Little houses are added, more doodles are added, and I love houses. Houses are meaningful to me. They symbolize community and belonging and warmth and safety, and so they often appear in my work. And this is usually the space or the place where I start to add all the final doodles and imagery that I love so much. Then I wanted to add words to this as well, so I called it Moon Children, added that in, and I think I'm doing some sparkles now to the night sky, which connects them to the girls again because of the hair and the sparkle. So there's that kind of connection between the background and the foreground, and it gives that really kind of nice, almost moody but nighttime feel. And in the end, I ended up really happy with this painting, even though throughout the process, which took me about 2 to 4 hours in total, although this is time-lapse obviously, I considered stopping and throwing away this painting on several occasions, and now I'm very pleased that I didn't. And I thought I'd tell you all about it for a change, because I thought, well, let's do something different for my lovely YouTube followers. So thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this voiceover, and if you like my work, do please come check out my website. That's www.willowing.org, where I also run many art classes and can teach you how to create paintings like this if you're interested. Thank you so much everyone for watching this. You are loved.